Everybody, welcome back to Off the Wall. I'm Mike.
What's up, everybody? I'm back. My name is Bogz.
We are here to talk about episode 7 of ANDOR. This is a lot of fallout from last week's episode in this one. This episode was all about repercussions of the attack, the robbery, the heist that we had on last week's episode on Aldani. And again, for a show called ANDOR, not a lot of screen time given that Cassian Andor. He's got some scenes, but a lot of the show is just kind of about everything else. But I don't necessarily think that's a problem. Bogz, what do you think, man?
Yeah, first of all, a 52-minute episode, which I definitely enjoyed, as opposed to, the other Disney Plus shows that are barely 30 minutes. So I did feel, it was tense, I'd say. Not intense, but at times it was tense. Definitely the pace has picked up. The last couple of episodes, as opposed to, my last 2 episodes have been the favorite of the series so far. Definitely picked up, and I felt the stakes for the antagonist and the other characters as well, which are the main, Mon Mothma, for example. And I do have a negative, which I'll say for a bit later, but mainly, lots of Easter eggs and callbacks, which I'm all about. Several Palpatine references. Masamida, who was, if anyone doesn't know, he's the blue announcement guy in the Senate from the prequel trilogy. Yeah. Obviously, KX units. We see obviously what happens later with K2SO, and that kind of his initial meeting of a droid like that. And Yularen, obviously, he is a background character in the original trilogy. He's obviously a more significant character in Star Wars Rebels and the Clone Wars. So awesome to see him as a character in live action as well. So and there's a few in, I keep forgetting his name, but Stellan Skarsgård's characters, kind of art room. There is a few. I believe I've seen Plo Koon's mask there, and there was a Temple Guard mask there. So there's lots of callbacks and stuff. Sprinkling that Star Wars dust all over this episode. But overall, yeah, it was a good episode. I did like it. You felt the threat of the Empire and Palpatine's kind of name, because obviously what happened in the last episode, with the heist and everything, the Empire have now taken the rebellion a lot more seriously, and Yularen referencing Palpatine several times, saying, directly I've spoke to Palpatine about this. It's connecting the Empire, taking things more seriously and leveling up, and everyone's in danger or at more of a risk now because the Empire taking things more seriously. Because I like that the Emperor is getting involved, and that was one of my criticisms before. Like, we have an Emperor of the Empire who, to their eyes, the public's eyes, he survived a coup from the Jedi. So he is the kind of anointed one to be the Emperor, and he's just not involved in this show. And and for me, that's engaging. That's so fascinating for that, that story point in general. And at this point in the timeline, I really think he should be involved. So hopefully, obviously, going into the, the Senate episodes and things like that, we will see Palpatine at some point. But I felt like he was missing this season. With this kind of storyline, with Imperial things going on, Palpatine really needs to be there. And yes, and at least we got a 6+ mentions of Palpatine in this. So I definitely liked a lot of things, but do have some criticisms. It wasn't perfect, not too much action in this episode as opposed to the last one, for example. But I think you might be right in terms of your theory of 2 slower episodes than a larger one, or more action one. Because I think we're over halfway now, and I believe the last 2 episodes is like a part 1, part 2 finale. So we'll see what's going on. But overall, a number of things to enjoy.
Yeah, I think because they mentioned that the Emperor is going to call a meeting of the Senate to put some new rules in place. I don't know if that happens behind the scenes this episode or if it's coming, but this episode made me feel like we might actually get a Palpatine appearance. It's not he's not credited anywhere on there, so it's probably a secret. I think before the series is over, we're going to at least have one big grandiose emperor testifying or proclaiming before the Imperial Senate in the show episode. Yeah, this was all Fallout, because we see a lot of what this show set out to do is show why the Empire are the bad guys, like what makes them the bad guys, other than just us being told they are. And now we're seeing like they got embarrassed, they got caught with egg on their face, and they're retaliating in full force, giving all their divisions and troops and all that basically unilaterally to act unilaterally and say, look, at this point, because he says like any transgression that has even like minute effects on the Empire is treated as like a class 1 offense. We see when Cassian's getting sentenced, and we'll talk about that scene in a second, but in his trial at the end, they're like, yeah, this would have been like a couple of weeks, you're in 6 years now for literally he didn't do anything from trumped up charges from an overeager trooper. Yeah, we're really seeing that the Empire does not like to will not take transgressions lightly, and they are retaliating with their full might. I'm glad you mentioned I'm just going to keep calling him Stellan Skarsgård, because Luthen is his name in the show. I love that he is based in this kind of like artifact antique shop, because stuff's going to come and go. And so you can put little new Easter eggs in every episode, because it's a store. Things come and go. He gets new stuff and stuff gets sold. So yeah, I noticed, I thought the same thing. I was like, I think that's either Plo Koon's mask or it's one of his people, which was cool to see. And yeah, you mentioned Masameda, like, yeah, there's other characters from Star Wars we're probably going to see, considering how far into the political system we're getting with this show. And that's been kind of the stuff I'm eating up, is like seeing how the world of Star Wars works, seeing how this government actually works. And last week we didn't get anything with Cyril, with Karn, the now disgraced security officer. But now this week we got to see him have his Office Space moment, where he gets assigned his cubicle and his red swing line stapler, and now he has to just kind of settle in, and he's still trying to make his stance like, well, I was disgraced because I did my job. And the guy's just kind of like, okay, all right, buddy, it's fine. Sit over there and do your job.
Yep.
What do you think as far as because we did a lot of Mon Mothma in this episode too. How do you feel about how they're handling her part to play in all this?
Yeah, interesting. So before this episode, I would have said, like, obviously we're seeing the Empire, slowly kind of ramp up. Well, as a consequence of the last episode, we have seen them obviously definitely ramp up the consequences of any wrong, any kind of movement or disagreement against the Empire, even just at a minimum level now, has been ramped up. But prior to that, we see kind of at this point the Empire is obviously taking over the galaxy and planets slowly. And instead of the wider pieces of this, like planets being taken over or the bigger consequences of this, like we have seen multiple times in the animated shows, like Star Wars Rebels, for example, with Lothal, or like across the Clone Wars, or other animated shows. Sorry, I meant. What we see with Mon Mothma is focusing on her like a dinner party, or like her anxiousness meeting people. Like that's been the political intrigue with her at the moment. Like it wasn't enough for me, like because what she kind of secretly works for the rebellion, so we're kind of fearing for her in like a dinner party in a house. Like, yeah, it is intriguing slightly, but now obviously we, with the Empire taking this threat of the rebellion more seriously, having Palpatine looming over it, it definitely adds more intrigue now, because of everything that Palpatine's been through. surviving these Jedi, and just having Palpatine attached to the story, it does add to that mysticism and that kind of mythic themes that I feel like this show is missing. You know, obviously no mention of Jedi, no Force use. You know, having a Sith being the ruler of the galaxy, and his influence in the being the emperor of the Empire, and this stuff being enacted, and now Mon Mothma is kind of standing up in her way and rebelling, and that now it's more intriguing from this episode. Prior to that, I was not too interested. I was thought of all the things they could do with Mon Mothma, because you know we see her in Rogue One and you know Return of the Jedi. At that point, she is the leader pretty much of the rebellion, and this is just a few years later, and she's kind of really early in that journey. So need to see kind of more involvement from her. So yeah, previously I thought it was taking too much screen time. Now I'm like, you know, really definitely more interested, because now the stakes are higher. Now the Emperor is involved. Now obviously, you know, maybe they have some kind of dialogue in the Senate. You know, who knows that? Now definitely the intrigue is there. So from this episode onwards, I definitely have been more interested in Mon Mothma's storyline in general. Prior to that, the kind of upper class, you know, meeting of like whoever they are, political aliens or like armed weapons dealers, whoever they must be, like I was kind of not looking forward to that, and it was kind of distracting from the just the action stuff, or like the other kind of imperial stuff that they could have introduced into the show. Now with that, now as a, you know, as of Palpatine being involved, or just mentions of him. That's what, he's not even appeared yet. Just his mentions and the changes done within the Empire. Now it's more intriguing. And with now Yularen in it and things like that. Now I'm definitely on board with Mon Mothma's storyline, because prior to this, I found it was really slow and dull, to be honest with you. But now I'm a bit more on board.
Well, now we're getting to see, because we know that this is leading, because the events of Rebels are after this show. And in Rebels is where we see Mon Mothma declare her allegiance to the Rebel Alliance and remove herself from the Senate. So I think what we're seeing now is her figuring out how involved in the rebellion she actually wants to be. We have that moment with her and Stellan Skarsgård in his shop where she's like, what did you do?
Yeah, because obviously she's anti-militarization, isn't she? We see that numerous times with Saw Gerrera in Rebels. She has that conflict where he splits from the rebellion from this, from her stance against militarization and extremism. So yeah, you're right. Like these are the sprinklings. Again, this is good. This is tying up the other canon and the bigger storylines and arcs, as opposed to just the little things like, I'm going to be uncomfortable at a dinner party. I'm not interested in that. Give me the bigger, you know, story themes. But sorry, carry on.
No, you're good. You're good. And it's cool because when Stellan Skarsgård says to her, he's like, look, you knew what this was. Don't act like you didn't know where this was headed. Like you need, and he's basically telling her, like, figure out what it is you want out of this and figure it out quick. And we see her. I liked the scene in the dinner party where she's talking with that old friend, and that slowly both of them feeling out where the other lies as far as their feelings on the Empire. We find out that she knows, you know, the rebellion needs funding, and she's you know, from a wealthy family. She's trying to get access to her own fortune because of the way the Empire handles people now. It's harder for her to get access to that kind of thing. So she's talking to this old friend, and just really kind of letting him know, like, you know, things are going to be changing. I'm going to let you in on as much as I feel like you probably need to know. As far as anyone's concerned, this is a charity thing. Because I like that line she says, and we saw this in the trailer too, where she's like, as long as they think I'm just annoying, they're not going to pay much attention to me and what I'm actually doing. They think I'm just trying to raise money for the poor people, and it's far bigger than that. But they'll ignore me as long as they think I'm just an irritation. But also that moment where she says, do not tell my husband, I can't trust him. You know, it's come out in since the show that I guess their backstory is that it was an arranged marriage. So it's just one of those, they're married because they have to be, not because they want to be. And her daughter's a piece of work, but most teenagers are, which is fine. To get to Cassian's part of this story, we see him go back home, which I did not think he would do. But I'm kind of glad he did, because he gets to realize, yeah, like there were repercussions for his actions. I think he's gone this long without any real consequences. The episode's all about consequences, and even he's getting some, like, yeah, your actions have consequences, Cassian. And a lot of people got hurt. Some people got killed because of what you did, and you've got to live with that now.
Yeah, and also that, you know, his adopted mother, again, forgot her name, but his adopted mother is now, which, you know, she was almost, you know, proud of hearing of that moment, not knowing it was him. You know, obviously he couldn't confirm as well, or he didn't. But the fact that she, you know, has found inspiration from that, you know, aware that the Empire is taking over the planet now, she doesn't want to leave. You know, he wants to kind of look after her and, you know, run away with his credits and stuff. And but yeah, he's obviously showing that he's this that he, you know, his actions, like you said, has caused these consequences. Maybe sparks other things of rebellion. You know, we obviously catch up with Bix as well, seeing where she's at. And yeah, I did think he would go back there also, because it's clearly not a safe place for him. Obviously ducking and diving from the Empire, but it was cool to see some of the flashbacks, because we got to see the clone troopers post Order 66, which, you know, very, very rare. We've got that in live action, but it was great to see them. You know, I did geek out a little bit when I saw them, so that was cool. And then obviously we saw the shore troopers later on this desert place rave thing that they're at. But yeah, it was definitely cool to see the clone troopers. But yeah, not the biggest kind of jump in a kind of story from Andor. Obviously, he's dealing with the consequences of what he's just done. Obviously, still needs to see or come up against Luthen is his name, and yeah, obviously we see as well that Andor and, you know, Mon Mothma in Rogue One have a relationship. You know, they're a part of the rebellion. We haven't seen their coming together yet, and obviously Andor, we're going to talk about at the end, but, you know, him getting arrested, etc. So yeah, some you know, just continuing on from the previous episode, the consequences, as you said. But yeah, interesting thing, definitely to go back home.
Yeah, especially the moment where he's speaking with, we have that flashback to what happened to his adopted father. We heard the reference to something about hanging in the street, and we kind of had that moment of remembering that day. And then, yeah, Fiona Shaw plays his mother, Marva, and she mentions, like, you know, anytime I have to walk by that square, I take the long way. And this, when I heard about what happened, I put on my favorite cloak, and I was smiling, and I walked down that street, because you can tell that this has been building up in her I mean, we already know she was part of some form of a rebellion years ago from how she found Cassian as a young boy to begin with, but to build up over the years, and then you've got, you know, the newly formed Empire kills her husband. And yeah, the clone troopers thing was cool, because just like in Obi-Wan, we're not seeing CGI clone troopers. These are people in armor, so it just feels real for the first time.
It does, yeah. And she's tired of the Empire, right? So
yeah, she's over it, and she's like, no, I'm staying here. He's like, there's a garrison bunker right up the street, and she's like, sucks for them. Sucks to be them. Like, I have a feeling that now, after this episode, I thought we were never going to see this planet again. I thought that's it, we're done. I think we'll be back. Because I think there's going to be some scuff ups or something that are going to happen as the rebellion continues to rise, and I think we're going to revisit that a little bit.
Sure. Obviously, Bix is there. His mother's there as well. A couple of other characters. So yeah, they're going to revisit that and see how they stand up against the Empire. Maybe something in conjunction. Yeah, definitely they'll be back.
Well, that goes into the last thing I wanted to talk about before we get to the ending, which is, you know, with the ISB and Miro, she's now been given authority over that planet because of what happened with Cassian. So he you know, her supervisor saying, you know, yeah, it's yours. Look into it. Figure out what, if you've got this much evidence, figure out what actually happened. If you're actually going to give a damn, do something about it. Just watch your back. And so I think, and now we know that Cyril is working for the ISB just as a, you know, coding guy, as an
I think
info
it
guy.
fuel something. Like, was it fuel consumption or something? That's what they
Something, yeah.
assigned him to. Yeah.
He's in a cubicle, but I have a feeling those two are going to come together because he's going to find out they're actually looking into it, and he's going to see that as his shot as redemption because he's a career man. So I think between the two of them, we're definitely going to go back to that planet. But that does take us into the kind of the end of the episode, because Cassian, you know, under a fake name, goes and is on this resort planet, which I had to look up the name for it. It's called Niamos. Okay, cool. And gets shaken down by a bit of an overeager trooper, and doesn't go well. It felt a little, given everything that's going on in the world right now, it felt a little like it was making a statement about something, about things we've seen happen in real life, with police shakedowns and all that. You know, it's like, hey, what are you doing? Nothing. Are you giving me attitude? Like we've seen and heard about those kinds of stories all the time. But yeah, you mentioned earlier, we get this introduction to the KX droids, which, you know, that's going to come back to play at some point. And Cassian, who normally would have gotten like a couple of weeks, is getting 6 years in prison for, allegedly, there's no, and keep in mind, there was no trial, there was no defense. It was just, this is what you're charged with, here's your sentence. That's it, that's done. How did you feel about how this episode ended?
It was really strange, actually. The last few scenes were a little confusing, to be honest. Like, yeah, what is he doing there exactly? Like, I'm sure we'll come into play the next episode and you'll explain why, but it seems like a little too convenient, or like he knew it was happening. Like, what, is he just on holiday there and just waiting around? And like, where is he walking to on the beat? Or like, I don't know. He seems to be quite purposeful a character, and he just was, oh, I'm just walking, I'm just got arrested. Yeah, the arrested stuff, I mean, it was a little too on the nose for me, you know, in terms of real life politics and stuff. You know, personally, I'm just speaking personally, I don't need that in Star Wars. But I understood that, you know, the Empire had ramped things up, you know, let's get him arrested. So it was all a bit convenient, too convenient for me. Yeah, it was cool to see especially when the droid first walks up. I thought, oh, is that K2SO? You know, is this the one? Is this how they first meet? But so yeah, that was interesting. And then the whole yeah, there's a mistake, and him getting locked up now, because obviously we see in the trailer there are a few, you know, like prison scenes. So obviously we're going to get that hopefully in the next couple of episodes. But obviously the intrigue is, who does he meet in prison? Obviously we know he gets out pretty soon. So obviously it's not going to, we know where the story goes from here. So it's not going to be a long thing. So how does he get out? And, you know, who does he meet? You know, the obvious answer is Saw Gerrera. We know Saw Gerrera is in the series. You know, we haven't seen him yet. So will it be there? Will it be somewhere else? So yeah, a bit of a strange ending. And, you know, it just cuts off with Cyril obviously not saying anything, just working away. So, yeah, not the best ending. I preferred kind of the first half of this episode as opposed to the second half, to be honest. But yeah, lots of questions about what's gone down there for me, because yeah, it definitely seemed like he purposely got arrested somehow. Like he knew that was going to happen because yeah, like he seems to be, you know, on the run all the time. So why is he going? Kind of why did he not run from the shore trooper? Like he was just hiding, and like it just seemed a bit too convenient. So he seems to be a smart character, so I presume that was on purpose. Like he wants to get arrested for some reason. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think I'm a little mixed on the ending too. I feel like it was a weird way to end the episode, considering.
Sure. And one more thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike cut you off. The music was so irritating. This like techno.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like people were like, you know, it felt like people were just taking drugs on pills, and it was like they were in like Ibiza trying to like, I was like, it's actually annoying, this music is, like, what's going on? And you know, we see that, you know, the next few days at the point of this recording, Tales of the Jedi will drop. You know, that's Kevin Kiner doing that, and I just know already that the music is going to be the best part of the show. And the music on this show is just really, really weak. it
Yeah.
might be the weakest thing of the whole show. It's actually a little irritating, the score is. So just got to say that, completely didn't go. It didn't suit that scene. I don't know what that was about. Yeah, I was like grimacing at some of that, the ending stuff with the score. But sorry to cut you off.
No, you're fine. The music for this show has been kind of my one thing. I'm like, sometimes it's really good, and sometimes, like today, I thought it was way off. I get what they were going for, which is he's on this like island vacation spot. It felt like cheap amateur dubstep to me. I wasn't
Sure,
feeling it. Yeah, I feel like, considering how everything else in this episode went down, I didn't need to end it with that. This almost seems like this would have been better suited as an opening for the next episode, but a lot of that's going to depend on what the next episode actually is. Because if the idea is that he was getting arrested on purpose, okay, that wasn't conveyed very well in this episode, and I don't like one episode being dependent on the next one. Like don't give me this and then have to make me wait another week to figure out what that there was something else in mind. Like, give me hints of that now. But also, if the idea is that it really was just a shakedown from some hard ass trooper just trying to shore up his numbers or whatever, okay, but it's still, that wasn't told that well either, because he legitimately, like, we see Andor is walking on this wall and the trooper's on the other side. There's no way he saw him. Be like, you've been walking down this thing and looking back and forth. It's like he's on a beach. Of course he's looking around.
right?
It's just one of those. It's like, I get what they're going for. I don't think it quite worked. And then, like you said, like the real life politics thing, like I get them wanting to. I understand what that's going for. That's never been a Star Wars thing, at least not to me. I could be reading it wrong, but that feels like more of a Star Trek thing.
Yeah,
Than a Star Wars
I mean,
thing.
real life politics has always been a part of Star Wars. Like, in terms of the general, like the bigger story arcs,
yeah,
representing World War II, Nazis, Vietnam,
yeah.
Return of the Jedi, that kind of thing. But like, just modern day, stuff, I don't need in Star Wars. No, thank you. I'm here for the mysticism, the mythology, the heroism, evil versus good. I don't need a police statement in Star Wars. It's just not for me personally. So yeah.
I get it. It's one of those, I get it. It just didn't do anything for me. Especially considering, again, how this episode was almost an hour long. You could have either spent a few extra minutes kind of making that scene maybe play out a little bit more and make a little more. It felt rushed. It felt very rushed.
Yeah, I agree.
So you got to do that, or just make the episode a few minutes shorter and just cut that out and make that part of the next episode. It just felt like a weird place to end the episode overall.
It did.
But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm still on with the show. Like, if that's my biggest criticism of the show, is just the music's hit or miss, and the way this one episode ended was kind of weak. It's still doing pretty good. I think I'm still super down for next week and looking forward to what's going to come next. Yeah, this is episode 7, so we are into the second half of the show. They seem to be going by 3 episode chunks of 2 episodes of setup, 1 episode of payoff. So maybe this 3 episode chunk is about him doing something in prison. Maybe this is where we finally meet Saw Gerrera. Maybe this is where he reprograms one of those K droids and takes it over, and we get Alan Tudyk, and it's awesome. We'll see. Kind of a whole lot of things we can do right now, especially with, like you said, Tales of the Jedi coming out soon. So let's just all good Star Wars. If you got good Star Wars for me, just keep throwing it at me. I'm into it.
Yeah, I'll just say, definitely the best things about Star Wars for me is the mystic elements. Obviously, as well. I'll say something quite important. Yes, the Force. Yes, Jedi. Yes, Sith, and all that, and the balance, and good versus evil, etc. And there has been a number of metrics dropped this week about viewing figures for Andor, data analytics, etc. And if anyone has seen them, very easy to find on Twitter. Andor is by far and away the lowest any Star Wars Disney Plus show that has come. So You know, for me, the USP has always been the Force, Jedi, the Sith, whatever, good versus evil. And without that, with so many gray characters, um, I don't personally, it's not why I personally watch Star Wars, but now that, like I said, the Emperor is hopefully being involved, now we're going to see clearer lines being drawn. Okay, are you good or evil? That's Star Wars. I'm sorry, it is. I know people really love, you know, not having the Force mentioned at all, but for me, that is a contributor to why the figures are what they are. Because without that stuff, you know, it's not going to put bums on seats for me personally. So um, I I can understand, you know, kind of grey or conflicted figures being put front and center, but it's not, for me, that's not the core Star Wars. That's not George Lucas's Star Wars. That's not the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, Clone Wars. You know, it's good versus evil. So having this grey stuff is just a bit too left for me from Lucas's original, you know, IP. So, like I said, moving forward, I can see now some clearer lines. Although I did like, you know, the episode. I'm definitely looking forward to the next few episodes, especially on Coruscant and stuff. So, I'm still looking forward to what's happening and in the show. But yeah, I think that's definitely been a contributor. So, although people love it, I think there is clear reasons why it's the least popular show, Star Wars show that has come on Disney Plus.
I think there's something to that for sure. Because the reason a lot of people watch Star Wars is they love the Jedi stuff.
I mean, it's more fun, to be honest.
It's
that simple.
Fun. It's wizards with laser swords.
And spaceships and aliens and
so I totally understand why, and I think we've said this before. I totally understand why this is not someone's kind of Star Wars. They're not into. This is a Star Wars story for a much more niche group of fans who are really into this side of things. If you're here for the Jedi and the mysticism and the good versus evil thing, this probably isn't going to be for you. So I can totally understand why the numbers might not be as high as some of the other stuff they've done, because it's about a character. It's named Andor, which is a character from a movie that nobody knew. That every time I've brought this show up, you guys watched Andor? Who's Andor? I have to remind them who he is. And it's a story that's not about Jedi. It's about people and how just kind of the world of Star Wars at this time. It's not going to be for everybody. So yeah, if you're looking for certain things, and it's not a testament to whether or not it's good. It's just a matter of whether or not it's your cup of tea. And if it's not your cup of tea, you're probably just not going to have a good time. So I'll be curious to see what the numbers look like at the end, though, based on like word of mouth and people saying like, hey, you should, especially if things happen, people are like, hey, you go give this an actual shot. Then maybe we'll see. But who knows?
Yeah, I'm definitely enjoying it. Not to say the numbers reflect if it's a good or bad show or anything like that. Obviously, it's all personal taste, to be honest.
Sure.
But in terms of the hard data, it's just in terms of why aren't people watching as much as other shows, you know, for me, the answers are obvious. So obviously, plus Baby Yoda really helped as well.
I mean,
I mean,
where's our
cool and all, but you know, he's not a Baby Yoda, right? Or he's not cool looking as a Mandalorian, for example. So that's
Andor's the dude. He's just the dude. So
I think sometimes you know, sometimes it shows a little too serious. Sometimes it's a little too slow. On top of USP stuff as well. So, but it's still interesting enough. It looks great, you know. The aesthetics and the cinematography and all that, that's all amazing, but it, you know, that needs to be I think talked about as well. I think that's fair.
I think that's totally legit. I think it's a very good point. And I think that's a risk they knew they had to have known that was going to be a risk. So
possibly, or unless there's something else coming in the next few episodes, whether it's a Palpatine or potentially a Vader or something like that, because we know Dan Gilroy isn't a Star Wars fan. He took on Rogue One to finish for a job to finish because they kind of wasn't happy with Gareth Edwards' final cut of the movie, so he had to rewrite it, he had to film it, etc. So him doing this, you know, he's involved in the Bourne movies, of course, so that's the kind of thing we knew we were going to expect that, but I think the slow pace as well is definitely a contributor, but like I said, it's definitely picked up in the last few episodes. So it's a long debate, but one for another time, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's what we think of this episode, guys. We always want to hear what you think. So make sure you let us know down in the comments. Let us know on Twitter. Make sure you like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we'll see you guys again here next time on another episode of Off the Wall. Bye.